Please welcome to the stage Chief Executive Officer of Wordly, Lakshman Rathnam, and Chief Executive Officer of Gevme, Veemal Gungadin, in discussion with Skift Meetings Editor-in-Chief, Miguel Neves.
Hello, everybody. I'm back. How are you? I see there's a little bit of air in the room, so great. We're going to be talking about AI in this session. You may have heard a little bit about it, but I wanted to get some air in the room, so if you can, stand up, please, just for a quick second. I just want to get a little bit of a vote by standing. If you can, stand up. If you can't, that's OK, or if you're busy doing something else. So I'm going to ask you to sit down if you sort of reach a certain kind of level. So if you've never heard of ChatGPT, sit down. All right. Well, if you have tried ChatGPT, but if you've tried ChatGPT, stay standing. If you've heard of it, but you've never tried it, please sit down. Okay. If you have tried ChatGPT for work-related things, stay standing. If you've not used ChatGPT for work-related items, sit down. Okay. If you use ChatGPT regularly as part of your work, stay standing. If you don't, please sit down. All right. So that was the real clincher there. That's what things change. So please sit down. Thank you for voting. Great. So as you may know, AI has been a hot topic for a little while. It's been about 10 months since OpenAI came out with ChatGPT, and that seemed to really trigger this attention on AI. It's been quite a wild ride. I have with me two leaders in AI for event technology on the stage with me, so I'm grateful for them being here. And we're going to ask you to look into your crystal ball and tell us what the future looks like, so hopefully you'll enjoy that. So I'm going to start with Lakshman Rathnam, the CEO, founder of Wordly. You started Wordly in 2019, and it's AI-powered translation. You may have tried the app. We had the QR code earlier. We'll see it on the screen as well. You do captions, translation. You also have audio, so people can listen to things in their language, their preferred language. And what I think is really interesting about the Wordly story is you had a number of competitors that were doing sort of human translations via an app. You could kind of listen to it on the phone. And all of them have turned to AI now. They all have at least the option to do AI within the platform. You must be quite proud of that, leading the way of everybody kind of following along.
Yes, for sure. But it's always good to see that the hypothesis is, once the hypothesis is proven and you have followers, then that's even more validation of not just the hypothesis, but the value proposition that people see in the product. So
I wanted to ask you just quickly if you could explain why Wordly needs AI. Right? Like, what's under the hood there? Because it's not very obvious when you use Wordly that it's using AI, but I know that you've explained why AI is important in the process of getting the audio and then getting out the words.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into it, and I'll try to distill this a little bit. So the AI is used in a few different ways when you're trying to gather speech and do the translation. First is AI needs to understand that the speech, whatever is spoken, is actually recognized properly. So there's a lot of models that are out there, and what AI does is predict what the next phoneme or what the next word is going to be while you speak. And then so that gives you just the recognition part of it. The other part of it is how do you translate this? And what you generally see is translation that's done word by word, which is great, but doesn't make sense, right? So what you then need to do is use AI to figure out phrase and sentence boundaries, and then try to figure out how that makes sense so that you can translate that better. Mm-hmm. And then there's translation engines that use a lot of AI on top of it. In that part, it's really important that, for instance, and I think we mentioned this, is if you're talking about automobiles, and especially in Europe, you say boot, and that refers to the trunk of a car. So versus when you say boot in the fashion industry, it's a different item. So how do you recognize these things from a contextual point of view is really important. Yeah. And that affects the translation and the quality of the translation. But these are just instances, but there's just a lot more that goes into it. Yeah.
So if I understood that correctly, it's not that you're kind of doing a Google Translate of word for word and then spitting that out very fast. You're actually using AI to go, this sentence no longer makes sense in this language. Let's reorganize the words and kind of make it all actually work as a phrase.
Right, and that's where, that's the reason that the solution has not been done by everybody, right? So if it was just calling Google Translate API and doing it, it might have been done, but there's a lot more abstraction that goes on top of it. Yeah.
Okay. Veemal, thank you for joining us today. You're also doing AI, event tech, but a little bit different. Your tool is Project Spark in partnership with PCMA. And you kind of have a chatbot tool that has a lot of different features. So it's not like ChatGPT, but you have a lot of different kind of varieties and different things that work in there. I would call that kind of not under the hood, so it's more kind of open-ended. I mean, you can see it on the screen. There's a lot of different options there. There's analysis. There's legal for contracts, which I think is really interesting, brainstorming, repurposing of content. Is this sort of like various different versions of ChatGPT and similar things kind of tied together in the back end and with some prompt engineering as well? Is that what we're seeing here?
Well, ChatGPT has really captured our imagination, right? But I think what's important to understand is AI has been around for a long time, decades now. The big change that we're seeing now is really the invention of a new method. So that new method is called the transformer model, right? And this new technique, what it's doing is it has made AI become much cheaper to deploy, much cheaper to implement, and then to do, for example, translation in a much more efficient way, which previously was not possible. So that's what gives rise to what we're calling generative AI. And ChatGPT from OpenAI, it provides one of the large language models. So today, there are over like 75 really world-class type of large language models out there. So it's not just ChatGPT. And then we have different types of tasks out there. So what we set out to do with Project Spark, it all started with experimentation, actually. We were like, hey, there's generative AI, this new class of technology. What can we use it for? Can we use it to analyze contracts? Can we use it to repurpose content, like translate videos into marketing content, right? And then for which task, which large language model would be really most suited for that? So that's the level of abstraction that Spark is really doing. And then, like for example, like you ask a certain question to ChatGPT. One of the main problem today is that it will make up things. So that's called hallucination. So one of the things that I think is going to be very important, like the usage of generative AI within enterprises, is to make sure you can trust the output. So then there are other mechanisms that then goes on behind the hood, which says, like, for example, validate the answers. And that's using AI to validate the output of AI itself. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit like the kind of things that goes on behind the scenes.
I mean, we did an experiment early on with ChatGPT where we asked it to do a number of tasks around organizing an event. And it did a lot of things really well, like emails and promotional things, all that kind of thing. But when we asked it to find speakers for an event, it found one speaker. I asked it to find 5 speakers. The first speaker was great. It's like, oh, this is a really good thing. And then the other 4 didn't exist. Yeah. They weren't real people. Yeah. And it was very uncanny how accurate and how it had a whole bio and description. It's like, okay, I don't know what to trust. Yeah. But that leads me into another question, which is there's a problem in the industry with scam conferences, with conferences that don't exist or sort of exist but aren't legitimate. And it seems to me that ChatGPT and Project Spark and other tools can be used to really make it easier for bad players to create fake conferences and scams. Is there anything we can do about that? You talked a little bit about verification, but how do we kind of deal with that?
So look, there's lots of promises around generative AI, new things, new opportunities that will be possible, but there's lots of dangers as well, right? It's a fact, like with fake content, fake conferences. By the way, that's not a new problem, right? That has been around for a while now. But with generative AI, that becomes so much easier. It becomes much easier to just create a fake website, to create a fake speaker, an agenda, just make it up, and then just put it up out there. So I think what we're going to be seeing then is really, number one, is how can we then use AI itself to validate certain content. But at the same time, I think with regards to this, like, it's also an opportunity for brands, right? Because what would people really trust? The content itself, the conference, a new conference, or the brand? Like, for example, coming up to Skift meetings forum, as opposed to another business events forum that is just created without that brand recognition over there.
So the value of having a brand and saying this is this brand and this is a good conference is more important than ever.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Lakshman, back to you. Was thinking about, I mean, obviously Wordly is great for accessibility and inclusion, right? You can, lots of people that maybe can't hear as well or need different languages, many different reasons. But are there other ways that using AI like Wordly for events that's changing the event itself?
Yes, in fact, I learned, I'll give you a few examples, but I learned something at this event, that journalists or reporters are actually using Wordly to post real-time quotes using Wordly. They're taking the quotes direct from Wordly, and they're posting it on social media in real time. So that's something I learned here yesterday, so that's great.
There you go. Well, it's great that we were able to teach you something about transcription.
Yes, but there's also other things, right? You can get summaries. You can get transcripts at the end of every session. You can get summarization of what was spoken in any conference or any session. Perhaps you missed a session, you can get summarization. So AI can be used in multiple ways. And then, of course, there's post-consumption of all of these sessions where you can subtitle and stuff. So I think there'll be many more opportunities that come up from this, because that'll lead to generative or AI being used for your subsequent conferences and using the content from the current conference. So
that makes sense.
I think there's.
I saw yesterday that Spotify and OpenAI announced a new thing that they're going to do with their top podcasts, where they're going to translate, they're going to use something like Wordly to convert the English-speaking podcast into different languages, but not just into different languages. They're going to make it sound like the voice of the presenter. So you'll have Joe Rogan speaking Spanish, German, French, etc. Joe Rogan does not speak Spanish, French, German, etc., but he will.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty impressive. Are we going to be able to do that for meetings as well?
Yes, in fact, I think the Spotify podcast, they kind of beat us to this news.
Did they get the press release out before?
They got the press release, but it's perhaps easier to do this on a trained audio or speech, because Joe Rogan is his speech patterns are known and you can actually do it. But imagine doing it for me as soon as I come here, and then for Veemal, and then for Miguel, and then for that audio to come in real time and happen to have that audio translate in that person's voice in real time.
So if I'm doing this interview, within a few seconds, you'll be able to then have me speak Spanish.
I think that is not far away.
Okay.
That is not far away, yeah.
So I want to go back to you, Veemal. I saw part of what you do on Project Spark. There's the marketing, which is great, the repurposing, the writing blog posts, social media posts, all these kind of things. But you're also kind of heading towards this business analysis and sort of more business functions or more analytical function with AI. Is that kind of where we're going? Our planners, because I'm interested in the planner role, right? We have this planner role that needs to learn how to use AI, and that's what Project Spark is for. Do you think planners are ready for this, to take it from marketing an event and those kind of roles to then actually using the event for real business insights?
So you see, as with every new technology, there's the technology adoption cycle, right? So you'll have the early adopters, then you'll have the majority, early majority, late majority, and then the laggards itself, right? So right now, what we're seeing within the industry is really, at this point in time, the early adopters really leveraging on AI and with things that are already available, already possible. But the majority of people still haven't gotten started, right? We already saw here, like all of you know about ChatGPT, but then there's only a handful of you that are using it on a day-to-day basis for your work. Now, there are different considerations for it. It could be maybe legal, it could be security, but you put that aside. So there's that technology life cycle. What we're doing on our side is we're really doing lots of work around understanding what will generative AI be really good for. So qualitative analysis, it turns out that this is going to be really useful. For every event, you collect feedback, for example. So people will be sending in feedback, and then that could be a rating, or that could be just plain text. Most of the time, this doesn't get analyzed. If it gets analyzed, it gets analyzed in a very fast way, or other companies will be paying an external agency to analyze that. But now if you have a whole bunch of text, you use large language models, you can do a sentiment analysis very easily within a matter of a few seconds. You do a panel discussion like this, you can analyze the content straight away, again within a matter of seconds, and then you say, hey, extract all the challenges that the speakers were talking about. Extract all the solutions that the speakers were talking about. Extract an action plan out of the talk itself. So those are the kind of things that we are already doing. But whether they're being used right now, like I said, it's mostly the early adopters that are doing this at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean those functions all sound great, and I know I was at a session in Copenhagen last week where you were presenting, and what I got out of that session was there was a lot of agencies and consultancies in the room, and I think there's a few in the room today, and they were worried. You know, they were saying, hey, this is great, but we charge an hourly rate to our clients. If now we can use AI to do this in half the time or a third of the time, we're not going to make that much money. And I think there's a chance that then staff gets laid off because suddenly AI can replace that staff, specifically for event roles. What's your view on that, and how can we deal with that? Is it about working less hours? Is it about doing more?
So first of all, with regards to charging, I think that's more a question mark at this point in time. There's not change that has happened within the industry yet. But the idea is this: if there's an agency that's charging time and material, if you're leveraging on AI to build concepts faster, to get content written faster, or to create visuals, videos faster, so should you charge less? Should the customer expect to be charged less? So again, that hasn't changed yet, but it's more of a question mark, right? But what's clearly coming out is there will maybe pricing doesn't go down, agencies don't charge less, but there will have to be more value that is provided, right? And I think that's what we're probably seeing.
And when you say more value, is it better content or more content or more kind of output?
Probably a combination of both, right? In terms of the quality, definitely. And then back to what you were saying, like, will that then replace people? I don't think so. We haven't really started seeing that. We haven't seen that even for those companies who are at the forefront, because one of the problems within the industry right now, and I think David was mentioning that earlier, is talent crunch, right? So there's not enough people to do the work, because almost all around the world there's a massive jump in events, but not enough people to do the work. And that's where automation, that's where generative AI is helping to cut down the time, and then to have less people to be able to take on more. Yeah.
I want to reflect exactly what he said. The last thing is that these consultancies, if they're scared that they're going to be doing less for less money, I think that's perhaps the alternate way to look at it is that you can do more with less time and make more and increase your productivity, get more clients. The fact of the matter is content is just increasing in the world. Mm-hmm. So there's the need for content is just more. It's not going down. So this AI really will help to provide more of this, deliver more content. You can also use it creatively to provide alternate content. So you can give the same customer different choices by using different prompts. Mm-hmm. right? So they can see 3 or 4 different perspectives using AI from one consultant.
Yep.
And I think that's the difference.
But are we not getting into a place where I write 3 bullet points down, and then AI creates a whole story out of that, and then the reader uses AI to take that story and get 3 bullet points as a summary for them to take home?
Yes, for sure. But I'll tell you, it depends on the data that you use. But the way that you create the 3 bullet points and the prompt that you use and the data sets that you use to create that is what's important. And I think we talked about this, is that if you use, and perhaps the data set that you use for your, give me the 5 speakers, you got 4 of them wrong, is perhaps the wrong data set to use to generate that result, right?
You mean there's better hallucinations elsewhere?
Or there, yes, and people creating resumes is not unknown, right? Or fictitious resumes. So
Yep.
I think that, I mean, I won't belabor it, but I think that the data set is the key.
But you know what? I'll tell you one thing. And we've done this with a few people, like speakers who would have sessions. Of course, they prepare their sessions, their ideas, they go out there on stage, they present. And then after that, we say, hey, we've got this video content now, we can summarize it. And when we summarize it, we can bring up the themes around it and then the 3 bullet points, like what you say. And many a times, the speakers look at the output, they're like, wow, I spoke about this? Because like AI can help here to put better organization in the ideas. And there's value to that. Yeah.
For sure. What about the big picture, right? We talked about the agencies maybe changing, business models changing. I think the whole workforce is changing. But where does that leave the industry? You know, do you see more mergers and acquisitions happening because everybody's using AI? Or are there more opportunities for small companies that can be incredibly efficient and can do things that they wouldn't be able to do before with AI?
I think there'll be more opportunities for startups, for new companies to come in, to try out new things, because we're really at the infancy of a new cycle with regards to AI. And bigger companies tend to move a little bit slower, to adapt technology slower, and I think there's opportunities for, disruption.
You agree?
I agree, because new ideas, while they get, smaller companies can move faster with new ideas, experiment faster, and fail faster. And if they fail, there are other startups. There are just many more of them. With big companies, that experimentation, while it's happening, happens slower.
So our own company is testament of that. So we've got Gevme as a product, which has been around for a long time. It's an enterprise-level product. And then we saw this whole revolution happening with generative AI specifically. We said, hey, let's build up a whole new team, a whole new product that gets built from ground up. The speed with which here, with this team, it's going, as opposed to what's happening with our enterprise software, the difference is really big. Yeah.
What about creativity? I know you mentioned it earlier, but my experience with AI, at least, is that AI kind of gives you a synthesization of the content that's available to it in a large language model. And then if we ask AI to be creative, can it really be creative? Or are we just repeating ourselves in a way that we think people want to see?
So again, I'll go back to the data set. If you have a good data set and a good training model, it'll give you good results. But my concern is, if you don't add new information to the data sets, then you're not creating new information in there. And I heard this somewhere else. If people start using generative AI to create essays and write something new, you're going to get the same old stories. And the question is, who is going to be the new Shakespeare, right? Who's going to be the new creative author that's going to come out if everybody just uses AI? You need a new Shakespeare to come, write something else, so there's more literature in there from which you can get more information. And that's where the creativity comes in. So we need people to think outside and add into the AI models.
Interesting.
Short answer, yes. But again, if you go back to generative AI, what can it really do? So we spoke about text mostly, but generative AI can be used today to generate images, to generate now videos, to generate music. So all these can be generated using generative AI right now. And there's plenty of examples where really creative stuffs are coming out of it.
We're not quite done yet. Okay. Well, this session is done, but thank you very much for sharing your knowledge in AI. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.